Good morning, my dear friends. I have been having a mind-blowing, like, whoa, wait a minute. I feel like I'm starting to figure some stuff out type of thing where it's like, yes, of course that makes sense. Like, how come that didn't make sense to me before? Which it did on some level, but like not on a deep, like, knowing level, I suppose. So I wanted to talk to you guys, fellow manifestors or people who know manifestors in their lives, about initiating and what that actually looks like. I have really struggled with the whole concept of initiation straight from the very beginning of like learning about human design. It just never really made that much sense to me. I mean, it did and it didn't, but to me, it's like anything that was modeled to me with what I was learning about being a manifestor in human design was like impact initiation, to initiate, to inform, all that type of stuff seems very masculine, like just very alpha. And I've always kind of been left with some confusion around like, where's the feminine in that type of initiating type thing that happens? Because when we think about initiating, it's like you tell someone what to do and then they respond by doing the thing, right? Like that's a very classical, very simple way to understand what initiating is. You tell someone what to do and they do it. Initiate. But what, like, that's so simplified, and yes, it makes sense, of course, but it's also an exhausting way to think about it too. Because are you just Ms. Bossy Pants all the time? Like, is that what a manifestor is just a bossy individual? And also, like, you see a lot of other people who are of great influence who are not manifestors, who are impacting people in a way, but not because they're a manifestor and not in the way that a manifestor operates. So why is that? What does that look like? Like, where are these things? Is this all just made up? Which I don't know, maybe it is, but I find this stuff really interesting. So it's like, how can I fit in my reasoning and understanding of like how I show up in life, where I feel like I could probably improve, things that I'm learning about, and kind of all just like meld it together in this like melting pot of information. So here's kind of my recent understanding of all of this that I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this too. So here we go. To initiate as a manifestor in a non-masculine way doesn't mean that you need to be like verbal all the time or like telling people what to do or to be seen on social media or have this big following on social media to get people to respond to you and your impact. The more I learn, I've been reading about gene keys a lot lately as well. I've gotten back into learning about gene keys and I find them really fascinating because I do think that there's great nuggets of wisdom in the gene keys that kind of help explain things to me in all other things like astrology and human design and whatever. So gene key 2 is basically kind of like about the feminine. So it's the fabric of life. And then gene key 1 is the masculine. So then there's the whole idea of like, well, what came first? Was it the feminine, the fabric, or was it the masculine, the actual thing? And I find this idea really interesting because the feminine is the mercurial. It is the in-between. It is the fabric of life. It is kind of where the quantum is. It is where the quantum is. It's the space between the particles. That's the feminine. That's the feminine piece. It's the fabric. It melds all of life together. It melds the masculine, which would be the density or the particles, together. So when we think about it from that perspective, masculine is the mass or the thing, and the feminine is the in-between, like the glue that keeps it all kind of like melded together. And I do think the masculine to me is easier to understand. And I think that a lot of us come at it from that perspective. I think a lot of the things that we've been taught that are all the masculine because it's easier to comprehend on a logical level. The feminine, the more mercurial aspect of things, is a lot more abstract and more difficult to comprehend with an analytical mind. So I think that's why it can be a little bit more difficult to exactly understand what the feminine is and how it works. I am not a huge expert in like masculine, feminine, and I'm only using these terms because they seem to fit with what I'm trying to explain. Although I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the like dogma that's out there around like masculine versus feminine or whatever. I'm kind of more at it from the masculine, feminine when it comes to gene key related stuff, because I really like how it's explained in Gene Keys. So just remember that part too as I'm saying things. So anyways, masculine, feminine. Well, when it comes to initiating then, as a manifestor, when you're thinking about the masculine and the feminine, who ultimately has the biggest initiation? We would think that the masculine does, because that makes logical sense, like the do this type of mentality, telling people what to do type of thing. But ultimately, the feminine is the one that has the final say. Like, they are the ultimate initiator. The feminine is the ultimate initiator. It's like, the feminine is the thing that causes the enzymatic reaction to happen. The feminine is the space where the thing happens, you know? So who's the actual initiator? Well, it's not the masculine when you think of it from that perspective, it's the feminine. Someone a little while ago, I think it was maybe last year, had commented on one of my YouTube videos. Chemo brain, by the way. I don't know if I've ever talked about my cancer last year, the cancer experience that I went through last year, but side note, I don't always remember what I'm saying sometimes, and I kind of forget, but no, I did not lose my hair from the chemo, by the way. Maybe I'll talk about cancer and my experience with cancer some other time, because it is also quite fascinating, and when it comes to all the stuff that I'm learning, especially about open centers and human design and that type of stuff, like some things that Vanessa Henry has talked about, but that's a side note to what I'm talking about here right now. Someone had commented on a YouTube video that I had made last year about the initiation. I think it was dating as a manifestor in human design. I think it was that one that she had commented on. And I really loved what she said. It's taken me a while to like conceptualize or conceptually understand what she said. Because to me, I've always come at power or influence from being seen, like making sure that the other person knows that I was the one that initiated. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like where this manifestor thing and me being a little bit confused about it has come from, especially because I find that really stressful. Like, it doesn't feel effortless. It feels effortful and prone to burnout. To constantly be operating from that masculine, like, do this mentality, or like, see me because I did this type of thing. But she had said that about the man in a scenario, a very like lyrical, beautiful scenario, that the man came up and gave the woman back her handkerchief and initiated the conversation with the woman. But the part in the story that people didn't realize was that she was the one that dropped the handkerchief. Is that not incredible? So it's such a feminine, like, whoa, you know, that she was the one that initiated by doing something as simple as just dropping her handkerchief. And that the man was the one that initiated the conversation, even though he was not the one that initiated the interaction. It's a feminine, like, you see that? Is that not fascinating? There's so much wisdom in that of you know, using femininity and feminine aspects that are difficult to explain, that are not always obvious, because then I'm sure, you know, in that situation, it could have been like, the man initiated the conversation in that respect because she dropped her handkerchief and he was giving it back. But when you take a deeper step back, the real enzymatic reaction that caused the chain of events to happen was the fact that she dropped the handkerchief. So who was the manifestor in that situation? She was the manifestor. He was the generator, let's say. He responded, but it seemed as if he initiated the whole thing. So I love that, because it helps kind of highlight just how how deeply impactful a manifestor actually is on a day-to-day basis without even doing anything or seemingly doing anything. Like you simply just being seen impacts people. That it's just a natural part of your state of being, and you forcing it. And I'm talking from my own experience, not you, but me. I have learned this the hard way, and I'm still learning about it because it's like an undoing of things. The forcing of the initiation or the forcing of the impact is, I think, when you get a lot of like the polarity and the drawback and the like happening, you know? So I can see that as, you know, that whole idea of a manifestor and freedom and, you know, kind of just like moving throughout the world in your own like free pace, kind of just showing up when it's right and then removing yourself when it's not right anymore. And that's just a natural thing, a natural cycle for a manifestor that doesn't actually make sense until it makes sense, I guess. So yeah, that's just something that I've been kind of contemplating lately, is the power of actually having a manifestor aura, and what does that actually mean? Because I've never really felt like it was that, like I've always kind of felt like I was invisible, or you know, I don't want to like step on too many toes or like, you know, walk on eggshells type of thing. So I just want to be in the background of everything. Ultimately though, even when you're in the background, you're still impacting and influencing, even though people may not consciously know that it's because of you that some of these things are happening. And that's a great amount of power to have, you know. I had actually just shared a little thing in a group that I'm in about mirror neurons, because mirror neurons also apply into this, and that whole idea of the butterfly effect, where, you know, that small flapping of the butterfly's wings causes a tsunami on the other side of the world. Well, you're the small flap of the butterfly wings, you know. That's what a manifestor is, and you can't help but not be that. And people may not even realize that you're the one that initiated anything at all. You may not even consciously realize you're the one that initiated it, but you did. So mirror neurons are really interesting when it comes to this whole idea, because we are biologically wired to mimic each other. It's originally, mirror neurons were something to help enhance survivability, because likeness enhances survivability in a tribe, in a group, or whatever. So that makes sense, right? We can all understand how that makes sense. When we're talking about like where we are now in humanity and, you know, the raising of evolutionary consciousness and all that type of stuff, mirror neurons also play a really important role, because if you, the impactor, the initiator, are in a good state, you're vibing at higher frequency vibrations like gratitude, love, happiness, joy, all that type of stuff. And then other people are just seeing that from you. You don't have to make a statement about it. You don't need to tell people what you're doing necessarily, unless you really feel compelled, because we do have a defined throat. So the like talking about that stuff, but not forcing it, because you don't have to. You're just naturally, that's just naturally an essence of who you are, is to impact people, even though they may not necessarily understand or realize that you're the one that's impacting them, that they come up with these grand ideas when it may not necessarily have even been, like they could have been influenced by a manifestor to have had this grand idea, or the download, or whatever. Like there's many ways to kind of contemplate or kind of see that, of how we all are, because we're all, life is a mirror, right? Like I am, like it's all just this interesting, like delusional sometimes balancing act of like what's going on in the world. And mirror neurons are really interesting when it comes to that too, because, you know, you being on a certain vibration frequency state, having certain types of thoughts will influence people around you, mirror neurons. And then that in turn, they take that with them to their other tribes or social circles or people that they run into in the day, type of thing. So that's the flapping of the butterfly's wings of how mirror neurons can influence like large portions of society, just all from a manifestor dropping a handkerchief. You know, it's really interesting. It's a really cool concept to contemplate and kind of think about. And I do think too that there's also the whole idea from a mentor that I've been following along for a little while, that she talks about equal power but different. And I think too, with a manifestor mentality, because we've always been taught about this hierarchy with the different human design types, that, you know, originally like a manifestor would have been the kings or the queens of the society, and then it kind of like went down from there, which is a top bottom way of looking at things. And it's a very old school way to look at things too, because it basically implies that people do not have their own will, in my opinion, is kind of what that implies. So, but what's important in this is to understand that instead of us being in a hierarchy, we're actually in a hub of a wheel. And so there can be like a manifestor at the center of the wheel that's impacting everyone around them equally, you know, equal power, but different. So that impact, that initiation may not even be a conscious thing where we actually realize that that's where it's coming from. But you are then, if a generator is responding to an initiation that they're not even consciously aware was happening, then in turn, they're like making the world go round with this like higher vibration of energy and this open, beautiful aura that is then influencing other people around them, because manifestors are not influenced, right? Projectors aren't not influenced. So reflectors too. So we're all just kind of like mimicking, vibing off of each other. And like, there's this fabulous interplay that happens that I think is really where, yeah, I hear sometimes generators say that, you know, they're not excited when they hear that they're a generator because it's 70% of the population and whatever. But I get that. I do understand that. I do also think though that there's a reason why 70% of the population are generators. And I think that it has to do with the time that we're in. And this evolutionary vibration and frequency that's starting to happen, and everyone plays a role in it. On some level, even if you want to look at it from human design or just look at it from, you know, there's many different perspectives that we could take this as, but come on, I'm not going to talk all day about my thoughts about things and, you know, where I'm still questioning stuff and figuring stuff out. But yeah, so I'm going to cut this off here because I think I'm starting to ramble. But what I'm trying to get at is that a manifestor initiation does not have to be a conscious thing. It doesn't have to be this like I'm standing on a pedestal and preaching to everybody type of vibe. It can just be something as simple as dropping the handkerchief, or, you know, smiling at someone on the sidewalk, or just literally just being you. Like, you don't have to do anything more than that, really. And if you want to make even more of an impact, it's a responsibility to shift your emotional frequencies, shift your thoughts that are attached to those emotional frequencies, and in turn that will ultimately influence everyone else around you, which will then they will influence everyone else around them too. So it's that whole butterfly effect thing. And I just think it's really beautiful just to realize that, you know, it's so simple, yet we make it so complicated. So I hope that helps you guys, if you guys kind of question that stuff too. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.